How are you? Good to hear from you all that you are sailing in the same boat as we teachers are here in the school. So dear children, be always happy and stay healthy. You know that to stay healthy, we need nutrients in the form of food. And among these nutrients, water plays an important role in our body to balance all the activity of the body. We also know that we should drink 3 to 4 liters of water every day. Now my dear children, I am having a question. When we drink water or when we quench our thirst or gallop a glass of water, in what position our body should be? Is it okay? We can say we have to sit and drink water, or we can say that we have to stand and drink water. Now who is ready to give the answer for this question? Arya, are you ready? Vismaya, what about you? Adit, Vishnu? Yes, Chaitanya, you can answer. Vishesha? Yes, my dear children. Some of you have said or given the answer that the body should be in a standing position when we drink water. Few of you have said that we have to sit and we have to drink water. And others, they have said the position of the body doesn't matter when we drink water. My dear children, the same question I asked to a child of your class as she is absent today, and she has given certain information related to the position of the body while we are drinking water. So we can watch the video and then we can come to the conclusion. Okay, my dear children?
Hi everyone, myself Mithuna Prakash, studying in +2 science. So right now we are going with this coronavirus, and many doctors around the world have recommended to drink plenty of water because water is an inevitable part of our body and it helps to fight such kind of diseases also. But we all consume water daily, but are we consuming it in the right manner? Because latest science have proved that water should never be consumed by standing, which many of us do. When we consume water in a standing position, the required nutrients and the minerals are not reaching the liver as well as the digestive tract. It risks the lungs and the heart functioning, as well as the oxygen level is also becoming damaged. Another important part is that when water is entered to the stomach wall, it causes erosion when it is consumed in a standing position. And another problem is that it can even cause the damage of the digestive tract. Another important role that is played by the kidney in ultrafiltration is not done when water is consumed in such a way. The impurities are getting retained in the kidney itself. But on the other hand, when we consume water by sitting, it causes the acid, or it maintains the acid level of our body, and the required nutrients are absorbed to the body in a proper manner. So make sure that you drink water not by standing, because we have to fight this corona. So drink water and stay healthy. Thank you. Have a great day.
As you have seen the video, I think now you have understood what should be the position of the body when we are drinking water or when we gallop a glass of water. This is a fact, my dear children, which we know, which is known to us, but we are ignoring it. Dear children, Benjamin Franklin sir, he has said that when the wells are dry, we will be knowing the worth of water. So dear children, drink plenty of water, not quenching your thirst, but to balance the body activity which is taking place in our body. With this, I will switch on to the botany class for the next session. Before going on to the next topic, I want to recap what we have studied in the previous class. Anybody can help me by just telling the gist of the previous class. Yes, Aditya, Advait. Yes, my dear children, you are recollecting it properly. I will help you out. We have studied about pollination, types of pollination, where we have studied autogamy, diatonogamy, xenogamy. In autogamy, we have studied Clistogamous and Chasmogamous flower, which is very, very important. You have to study, you have to learn it. And then we just switched on to the types of pollination, where we have studied the agents in which we have studied about the wind pollination, water pollination, as well as animal pollination. And in that we have just gone through, or we can say we have studied about the characters of flowers related to wind pollination, water pollination, as well as animal pollination. And after this topic, we have studied about the pollen pistil interaction, and later on we studied how the pistil is recognizing the pollen grain and how the changes are taking place in the structure of pollen grain. Now, my dear children, when we are moving on to this session, we are going to study the remaining part of pollination, and we will be moving into the next topic, that is post fertilization. Even before that, we will be studying about fertilization also. So here you can see artificial hybridization, the process of crossing of two genetically different organisms artificially is called artificial hybridization. This is achieved by three methods or three processes. Number one is emasculation, number two bagging, and number three is artificial pollination. This topic you have studied in your previous classes, or I can say you have studied in your lower classes. If you recollect it, you will be getting what is artificial hybridization. Now, in that, first is emasculation. The process of removal of anthers from the flower buds of female parent is emasculation. That is, you can see here, this is the picture where artificially from the female parent, with the help of scissor, the anther is removed before pollination, isn't it? And the aim of emasculation is to prevent self-pollination or autogamy. And next one is bagging. Here you can see the figure. In the case of bagging, the emasculated flowers should be protected from unwanted pollen by covering the flower with a bag of suitable size. So after taking or removing the anthers from the female flower should be bagged. What may be the reason, my dear children? Can you guess? This topic you have studied in your previous classes also, isn't it? So the reason is, if that anther, it will be there, what will happen? Self-pollination will be taking place, isn't it? So after removal, there should not be any contamination in the flower. For that reason only, the flower is bagged by a suitable size of paper, and here they have said generally it is made up of butter paper. Next, the third one is artificial pollination and rebagging. That is, the stigma of the flower is dusted with the mature pollen grains collected from the selected male flower. Again I repeat, the stigma of the flower, you can see here, the stigma of the flower is dusted with a mature pollen grain. You can see a brush is there, in that you can see yellowish color area, that is the mature pollen grain collected from the selected male flower. Now, after the pollination, when it is been dusted, what will happen? The stigma receive the pollen grain and pollination will be taking place there. So, after the pollination, the pollinated flowers is to be rebagged and the fruits allowed to develop. Here you can see the second step. After the pollination, what is been done here? Again, it is rebagged. Same reason I can say here also, my dear children, it should not be contaminated or the self-pollination should not take place. That is the reason it should be rebagged. So that is related with artificial hybridization, where we will be doing pollination artificially with the help of the human beings. Now the next one is related with the fertilization, that is the second step in the case of events taking place in sexually flowering plants. And in the case of fertilization, especially we can say the peculiarity which we can see only in the angiosperm is that it is always undergoing a process known as double fertilization. This double fertilization is the only peculiarity which we can see in the angiosperms. It is not been seen in any other flowers or plants. And we can see what is double fertilization. Before that, we have to see what all parts or what all other parts consist of. Syngamy is one of the part, or number one, or we can say syngamy is one of the process, and triple fusion is the other process which constitute double fertilization. What is syngamy? See, my dear children, just now I told you, when the pollen grain stick onto the stigma, pollen pistil interaction will be taking place and the stigma will be able to recognize which is the right pollen grain, and after that the pollen grain will be producing a tube in which two male gametes are produced, and these two male gametes with the help of the pollen tube reaches the ovule through synergid with the help of filamentous apparatus, or we can say filiform apparatus. It enters into the embryo sac, where we already studied about the arrangements of 8 nucleated cells in the embryo sac in our previous class. Among those 8 nucleated, or we can say 7 cell embryo sac, we have studied that there is an egg as well as 2 polar nuclei. Now we can see what happens to the egg as well as the 2 polar nuclei when the 2 male gametes enters into the embryo sac. So here you can see first male gamete from the pollen tube, which is n in number. So this male gamete is haploid, fuses with the egg present in the embryo sac, or we can say this male gamete fuses with the egg cell, which is also haploid, or we can say as it is n in number. And when the fusion takes place between the male gamete and the egg cell, zygote is produced, which is diploid or 2n. And this zygote later on divide and multiply, and embryo is formed there, which is also 2n. Later on this embryo will also divide and multiply, and plantlet will be produced, and from the plantlet a plant is produced, which will be 2n in number. I think, my dear children, you came to know about syngamy. Now the second process is triple fusion. Here you can see, as I told you, one male gamete is fusing with the egg cell. Now the second male gamete is present there in the pollen tube, which is also n in number, and there are 2 polar nuclei in the embryo sac which is centrally placed in the embryo sac. They are also n in number as they are 2, so it is n plus n, isn't it? Now n plus n of the polar nuclei and the n of the male gamete, when they fuse together, we can see primary endosperm nucleus is produced, which is 3n. I think you would have understood how this 3n came here. N plus n is 2n plus this n, so it is 3n. From the primary endosperm nucleus, which is also known as PEN. From PEN, primary endosperm cell is produced, which is also 3n in number, and from there we can see the production of endosperm, which is also triploid, or we can say 3n in number. So I think, my dear children, you would have understood what is double fertilization. Double fertilization is a process where synchemy and triple fusion takes place, and due to which plantlet is produced. In the plantlet, we can see all these processes are taking place. This is very, very important, my dear children. So that is about the fertilization event taking place in flowering plants. Now the third event is post-fertilization structure and events. Post-fertilization, and from the name itself we can say events that take place in the flower after double fertilization are collectively known as post-fertilization event. So the events which are taking place after the fusion of gametes, or after the male gamete when it fuses with the egg cell as well as the polar nuclei, after that what all changes is taking place in the flower, we can collectively say as post-fertilization events. And the events are: number 1, endosperm development; number 2, embryo development; number 3, seed development; and number 4, fruit development. So these are all the events or changes taking place in the flower, or we can say in the flowering plant. Number 1 is endosperm development. Already it is been said that endosperm develops from PEN, that is primary endosperm nucleus. Now what happens to this primary endosperm nucleus? It undergoes successive nuclear division to give rise to free nuclei. That means this primary endosperm nucleus will be undergoing continuous nuclear division, and what will happen? Numerous nuclei are produced there in the cell. This stage of endosperm development is called free nuclear endosperm. In an endosperm, if we are having more than one nucleus, isn't it? So what will happen? Surely it will lead to a multicellular nucleus in the cell. And this is a stage called free nuclear endosperm. Later on, the cell wall is formed and endosperm becomes cellular. How the cell wall is formed? By the process known as cytokinesis. And this is called cellular endosperm. This is how, my dear children, endosperm is developed in the plant. Now what is the function of endosperm? It is the nutritive tissue used for the nourishment of the developing embryo. So endosperm develops first, followed by an embryo. Now you understood why endosperm develops first before the embryo, or we can say why endosperm is developing followed by an embryo. The answer is as endosperm is the nutritive tissue which is used for the nourishment of developing embryo. Understood? You can see here, in this case, this is primary endosperm cell. Here you can see this is primary endosperm cell, this is embryo sac, isn't it? In this we can see primary endosperm cell is present there, and this one is primary endosperm nucleus, which is the NE number. And later on in this area we can see the changes, and this primary endosperm nucleus will be dividing and it will be forming the complete endosperm, so that the embryo which will be produced here after the fusion of one male gamete with the egg cell, that embryo will be able to consume endosperm for its growth and development. Now, the second one is embryo development. The product of syngeny is zygote. We know that just now we studied, isn't it? When syngeny is taking place, the product is zygote, and the development of embryo from zygote is called embryogeny. So what is embryogeny, my dear children? It is the development of embryo from zygote. Now we should know the steps in the development of embryo. How the embryo has developed from the zygote, there is a step. So we can see the step. Number 1, zygote which is produced there after syngeny is divided by transverse wall to form two-cell pro-embryo with basal cell and terminal cell. What happens to the zygote? It divides. How it is dividing? By transverse wall division. And when a transverse wall division is taking place, transverse means like this. When the transverse wall division is taking place, that time the zygote will be having two cells, isn't it? And the two-cell structure is called pro-embryo. And in that pro-embryo, we can see two cells, basal cell and terminal cell. Basal cell is formed towards the micropylar end of the ovule, and terminal cell is formed towards the chalazion end of the ovule. You may be knowing what is micropylar end as well as chalazion end, which we have already discussed in our previous class. Now, what happens to the terminal cell we can see? Terminal cell divides to form, number 1, as multicellular globular embryo. So what is the first thing taking place in the case of embryo? The terminal cell, which is present here at the chalazion end, will divide, and multicellular globular embryo is formed there. That is the first stage of embryo. Now later on, this multicellular globular embryo will be formed into heart-shaped structure, and then from the heart-shaped structure it will again go into many divisions, and the cell will enlarge, and last we will be getting a mature embryo. So my dear children, this part is again very important, as we should know how mature embryo is formed. It is formed from the division of terminal cell. Understood? Now, what happens to the basal cell we can see? Basal cell divides to form filamentous suspensor. It is, you can see here, this is suspensor. A neck-like region you can see in the case of embryo, where you can see it is called suspensor, isn't it? What is the function of suspensor? It pushes the developing embryo into the endosperm to absorb nutrients. So what is the function of suspensor? To push the embryo into the endosperm. For what purpose? So that the endosperm will be able to nourish itself by taking the endosperm as it is a nutritive tissue. Here you can see in the picture. Already I said through syngeny zygote is formed, and the zygote will be undergoing division to produce two cells, that is basal cell and terminal cell. The terminal cell will again divide to produce a multicellular globular embryo, and later on this multicellular globular embryo will produce a heart-shaped embryo, and after a certain period of more successive division, the mature embryo we can see, which is having a radical, cotyledon and plumule in it. And the next cell, that is the basal cell, will divide and it will produce a filamentous type of structure that is called suspensor, and the suspensor is pushing the embryo into the endosperm so that the embryo will get the nutrient by absorbing it. So this structure is again very important, my dear children. The third one is, as we came to know that mature embryo is formed by the division of zygote. Now, in the case of embryo, based on the cotyledon, we can classify embryo into two types: dicot embryo and monocot embryo. Dicot, di means two, cot means cotyledon. The outer covering present in the embryo, and the outer covering will be in two parts or it will be as one part. So if it is two, it is called dicot. Now, as I told you, dicot embryo is formed there, and we can see the structure of dicot embryo. It consists of an embryonal axis and two cotyledon. Embryonal axis and two cotyledon. Embryonal axis is the point from where the root as well as the shoot is originating. And cotyledon, already told you, it is a protective layer. If in the embryo two cotyledons are there, you can see it as dicot embryo. Now, the portion of embryonal axis above the level of cotyledon is epicotyle. It is called epi. Epi means above. Cotyle means cotyledon. That means if the portion of embryonal axis is above the level of cotyledon, it is called epicotyle, and this epicotyle terminates into stem tip or plumule. Plumule means it will give rise to the stem. Understood, my dear children? Now, the next one, portion below the level of cotyledon is hypo. See, now you may be confused. Why this it is epi and this hypo is above. Epi means below. Like this we have studied, isn't it? But in the case of botany, epi means, that is, epi means it is above the cotyledon and hypo means below the cotyledon. So here the portion below the cotyledon, the embryonal axis, if it is below the level of cotyledon, we can say it as hypocotyle. And hypocotyle terminates with root tip or radical. Here you can see the radical is here. So this is hypocotyle and terminates into the root tip, as well as we can say it as radical. And the root tip is covered with root cap, which is also known as calytra. This is the root cap, which protects the radical, or we can say the root. So this is a structure of a typical dicot embryo, where we can see epicotyle is terminating into plumule, and we can see two cotyledon, and hypocotyle region is there. It is terminating into radical, and the radical is protected by a root cap. I think, children, this also you have understood. Now the second one is structure of monocot embryo. Already I told you that monocot, mono means single, cot means cotyledon. If the embryo is having a single cotyledon, those embryo or that embryo is known as, and it is called as monocot embryo. Now here we can see it consists of an embryonal axis with one cotyledon and single or plate-like cotyledon situated towards one side of the embryonal axis is called scrotum, already I said that only one cotyledon is there and it is plate-like or it is single or plate-like, and where it is situated, one side of the embryonal axis. That plate-like cotyledon is known as scutellum. Okay. Now, the portion above the embryonal axis is called the epicotyle. Already we have studied in the dicot embryo that if the portion of the embryonal axis is above the embryonal axis, if the portion of the embryonal axis is above the cotyledon, it is called epicotyle. And epicotyle has a shoot apex called coleoptile. In the case of epicotyle, which is present there in the embryonal axis, which is seen above the embryonal axis, there we can see it in the form of a coleoptile. In the figure we can see that. And next one, the portion below the level of embryonal axis, as such it is called radicle, and it is enclosed as undifferentiated sheath called coleorhiza. That means radicle is present there, which is protected by a mass of cell. Undifferentiated sheath, it has been said. That is, a mass of cell is there which is protecting the radicle, and that is called coleorhiza. This is a picture of a monocot embryo, and here we can see a large portion of the seed is covered by endosperm, isn't it? Then, when it has been already said that to one side only the cotyledon is present, isn't it? To the one side of the embryonal axis, a single plate-like cotyledon is present, which is known as scutellum, isn't it? And we can see here coleoptile, which is giving rise to plumule, and we know that what is plumule? Plumule is the portion which is above the embryonal axis, which will produce the shoot, okay, or we can say the stem. And we can see here radicle and the coleorhiza, which is protecting the radicle. So this is the structure of monocot embryo, my dear children. Now the third is seed and its development. After all those processes, the embryo will develop into seed, and we should know what is the thing which is taking place there, which is helping the seed to develop. Seed is the end product of sexual reproduction, which is the fertilized ovule. That means seed is to fertilized ovule. This is the base pair relationship which used to come in the question paper. Seed is to fertilized ovary. Again I repeat, seed is the end product of sexual reproduction, which is the fertilized ovule. Which is the means seed. Seed is a fertilized ovule. Now, seed, it consists of coat, and these coats are formed by integuments. Already we studied in the structure of ovule, it is having integuments, a protective layer, and these integuments later on will be forming the seed coats. Now, in the case of integument, as I told you, two integuments are there normally in the structure of ovule, and the outer integument is testa and the inner integument is tegmen. Here it is said that testa is the outer integument or the outer seed coat, and tegmen is the inner integument or it is the inner seed coat. Now the seed coat encloses embryo and endosperm. We know that why? Because it protects the embryo as well as endosperm. Based on the presence and absence of endosperm, we can classify seed into two types. Here you can see albuminous and non-albuminous. Albuminous means the seed which is having abundance of endosperm in it. Example, maize, castor, etc. Non albuminous, it is also known as non-endospermous seeds. From the name itself, we can say these seeds does not contain endosperm. They don't have endosperm. And example is pea and beans like seeds. Now, in some seeds, in some seeds, the remnants of nucellus is the part of ovule, are persistent. That means they will be there. They will not, or we can say they will not be removed, or they will not fall off. They will be present there in those seeds. This residual persistent nucellus is called perisperm. So what is perisperm? The persistent nucellus present in the seed. Such type of seeds, in such type of seeds, the term will be said as perisperm. Example, in the case of black pepper and wheat. In this figure, we can see during for pre-fertilization event, in the female gametophyte, we saw nucellus form. And later on, during the post-fertilization event, the nucellus, we can see it is multiplied and embryo is developed there. With that, endosperm is also developed there, and there itself we can see the formation of perisperm. Later on, you can see a larger view of this structure where you can see endosperm is present there as well as the embryo is present there, and the larger portion is there with the perisperm, which will be present there throughout in that seed. So such seeds are said to be, or we can say the persistent nucellus, if it is present in such seed, it is called perisperm. We can see the difference between perisperm and pericarp. Pericarp, you may not be knowing about it. It is related with the fruit. Now later I will be telling you what is pericarp. Perisperm you can see here. In this figure you can see perisperm. This is the area. This is the perisperm, and you can see endosperm. You can see embryo. Now here in this figure itself, this is pericarp. Pericarp means it is the part of fruit where we can see outer layer, middle layer and inner layer. Outer layer is called exocarp, middle layer is called mesocarp, and the inner layer is called endocarp. The three together is known as pericarp. Pericarp is also known as fruit wall, which we can see in the fruits. Now, in certain cases, what happens? Sometimes the seed fails to germinate even in the presence of optimum conditions for germination. If there is an optimum condition present there for the seed to germinate, sometimes it will not germinate. That process is called seed dormancy. It is a period of rest. The period of rest or the dormant condition of the seed is called seed dormancy. Next one is seed viability. It is the ability of a seed to germinate and produce seedling, and this viability term already we have studied in our previous class related with the first chapter. My dear children, if you recollect it, you will be getting it where this term viability I said. Yes, Vishnu, can you recollect it? Yes, my dear child, you are correct. Pollen viability we have studied, isn't it? In the same way, there are seeds which are having the ability to germinate and to produce seedling. So the ability of the seed to germinate and to produce seedling is called seed viability. And the viability of the seed, it varies from species to species. That means in some cases seed require a period of time, or in some other cases sometimes it require lot of, or we can say the span of the germination, it will be high. So that is about seed viability. The oldest seeds are lupin, lupinus lupinus articus. It is lupinus articus. Articus is the species name, and the species, it is being discovered from Arctic tundra region. Therefore, the name came as Arcticus. And here it is being said that this lupin seed is the oldest seed which has been discovered from Arctic tundra. So this is one of the example of seed viability. Now the next one is fruit development. Fruit is the ripened ovary. Again we can see here base pair relationship. That is, fruit is to ripened ovary. You have to study like this, my dear children, as this kind of question used to come in the examination. Next one you can see the whole of the fruit is called pericarp. Just now we have studied what is pericarp, isn't it? Pericarp is the fruit wall which consists of three parts: exocarp, mesocarp and endocarp. So here you can see the fruit may be fleshy or dry. Fleshy fruits, the fruit wall is soft and fleshy. Example, guava, orange, mango, etc. And in the case of dry fruits, the fruit wall is dry. Example, groundnut, mustard, etc. Now there are again two types of fruit based on the development of the fruit from the ovary or from other part of the ovary. So we can see true fruit and false fruit. True fruits are the fruits which develop only from the ovary. Example, pea, wheat, maize, etc. And false fruits are those fruits which develop from the parts of the flower other than the ovary. So this is how we can differentiate true fruit and false fruit. Now here you can see which is the true fruit and which one is the false fruit. In the case of true fruit, example is mango, and you can see here three fruit walls are there: epicarp, mesocarp, endocarp. Epicarp is also known as exocarp, and it is having a seed coat and a seed. Now in the case of false fruit, that means from the seed this fruit has developed. Therefore it is known as true fruit. Now in the case of false fruit, you can see here the picture or the figure of apple. And in the case of apple, we can see the pericarp. Seed is also there. But here the difference when we see, we can see here fleshy thalamus. And there is a remnant of calyx. Already thalamus, calyx, all this you have studied in your lesson. So here see, from the fleshy thalamus, it is an edible part, isn't it? So from the fleshy thalamus, this fruit has developed. It is not developed from the ovary, isn't it? As it is been said that false fruit will be developed from other part of the plant other than the flower. So other than the ovary. Other than the ovary. So here again I say false fruits are those fruits which develop from the other part other than the ovary, and the best example is apple. You can see here apple, the edible part develops from the thalamus. In the case of strawberry, fruit develops from thalamus. So the strawberry is also a false fruit, isn't it? And in the case of cashew, again we can see edible part develops from the pedicel or the thalamus. So we can say cashew is also a false fruit, isn't it? Now the next part is related with the next topic, that is parthenocarpic fruit. It is related to the fruit only. Here you can see fruits which are formed without fertilization. Already we have studied that seeds are formed there, plant will be developed and the fruits will be developed there. All are taking place through sexual reproduction where male and female gametes will be fusing together, isn't it? But there are certain rare cases in the case of plants where we can see fruits are developed without fertilization, isn't it? These fruits will be, or they are seedless. Example, banana. Parthenocarpy can be induced through the application of growth hormones such as auxin and gibberellin. That also you have studied in the previous class in your 11th standard related to the growth hormones such as auxin and gibberellin. So growth hormones auxin and gibberellin, when it is applied to the parthenocarpy, what will happen? We will be getting seedless fruits. So here you can see in the case of orange, not a single seed you can see over here, isn't it? So such kind of fruits can be developed through the process called parthenocarpy. And to the last topic, apomixis and polyembryony. Apomixis, it is a modified form of reproduction in which seeds are formed without fertilization. Again I repeat, it is a modified form of reproduction in which seeds are formed without fertilization. As I told you, parthenocarpy is one of the form of apomixis. There is another form of apomixis taking place in the case of animals, and it is parthenogenesis. Example, honeybee. And next thing, it is a form of asexual reproduction that mimics sexual reproduction. What is apomixis? It is asexual reproduction, but what it is doing? It mimics sexual reproduction, isn't it? Now examples we can see in the species of Asteraceae and grasses, we can see apomixis. Next one, which is very important related to apomixis, is that it is an important process in the case of agriculture. See, farmers, they are using hybrid seeds for increased production. Every year they are buying hybrid seeds and the cost of hybrid seed is very high. They cannot afford the cost of hybrid seed. And the second thing is that these hybrid seeds we cannot carry to the next generation, because when it is being sown and it is producing a seedling, the character present in the hybrid seed will segregate, and what we need we will not get from those hybrid seed. That is the drawback of hybrid seed. And now if the seeds are produced through the process called apomixis, those seeds if you are using them in the agriculture, farmers, they can produce the plants or the crops by increasing the productivity, as well as they can afford the seed. That means once only they can produce the seed through apomixis, and these seeds they can use year after year for the better production of the crop. So that is the important part of apomixis which has to be utilized in the agriculture by the farmers, and nowadays research is going on the process of apomixis, how to use it more and more in the field of agriculture. Now my dear children, the next topic is polyembryony. From the name itself, polyembryony. Poly means multiples or numerous. Embryony means embryo. The presence of more than one embryo in the seed. The presence of more than one embryo in the seed is known as polyembryony. Example, seeds of orange, citrus, etc. When we cut the orange or when we cut the citrus or when we cut the cucumber, isn't it? What we can see there? We can see multiples of seeds or numerous seeds in them. That is polyembryony. You can see here, my dear children, it is the citrus ovule, or we can see the young seed in section which is showing a normal as well as a nucella embryos. Here you can see this is a normal embryo, and with that you can see the nucella embryo. These are the nucella embryo, and here you can see the endosperm, integument, other parts, isn't it, in the ovule. But what is important here? With the normal embryo, we can see many other embryos which are growing together. So this type of multiple embryo we are seeing there in the ovule, we can say it as polyembryony, isn't it? So my dear children, with this I wind this session, and I think you have understood today's topic very nicely. And with this, our second chapter, sexual reproduction in flowering plant, is completed. You have to write down the notes related to this topic, and I will be connecting to you through the video for the further proceedings of this chapter. Till then, my dear children, stay healthy, be happy, drink plenty of water so that you can go on with your all the bodily activities in a balanced way. Have a great day. Thank you.